What's up? You.
I am Ronald Young Jr. I'm an audio producer, storyteller, and host based out of Washington, D.C. And we're here to talk to you all about content creation for change. And we'll tell you a few stories about these very wonderful people sitting next to me, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Abby.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I have to talk loud because my voice is so quiet. First of all, I always have a little bit of a challenging time with an intro because we do a gazillion different things. But I think first and foremost, I'm a creative artist. I'm an alopecia advocate. And I'm a wife now.
Yeah.
As of 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We just got married 2 weeks ago, so we're still very excited. But yeah, I also live in Los Angeles with my husband, Wade, and we run a creative media house there. So we do a lot of different things, but that's a little brief synopsis. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I agree. The title I love the most is this woman's husband that I'm so excited to say now. I'm like, wow, I don't even know what word to say. Husband, what? But yeah, I'm very fortunate to have met Abby. We've worked together for a while now, building a couple different businesses. My background is specifically as a video creator online. I've built communities and created content for the past 16, 17 years on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Worked with brands, helping them build communities and kind of think outside the box on how to make content like that. We live in Los Angeles now. We run a creative agency. Before all that, I used to be a competitive skier, and that kind of led me into the outdoor space, creating content specifically in the outdoors. And now I'm here with these lovely human beings talking to y'all. So here we are, honeymoon, Vermont version.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I love that you said think outside the box, because when I think a lot about the work that both of y'all do, it's like definitely outside of the box. It's definitely unconventional. Abby, let's start with you. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you started coming outside of the box? What did it look like to be in the box? What did normal look like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ooh, we've had some really good discussions about this throughout the weekend, or week. What day is it? Yeah, I think for me, I grew up in rural Montana on a Native American reservation, and I feel like normal looks very differently for all of us, right? It's very, very different for everyone's experience based on where you grew up, what your life experience is, what it is. So I think that that's really, really different depending on who you talk to. But for me, I think I grew up with beauty standards that I was very aware of, and that was my normal. I saw the way women were presented in the world in a very normal way. So I kind of built this relationship with seeing normal as the people, the humans around me.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think, I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, and I saw Victoria's Secret models walking on the runway, and so I, over time, built this idea in my head of what normal looks like, which ended up being a very blanket statement that did not represent a lot of people. So yeah, I think that's kind of my relationship with how I viewed normal. It's changed a lot as I lost my hair and I have alopecia. So now my normal looks very different, and I'm very vocal and very loud about shifting up that discussion. Yeah.
We'll dive deeper into that in a second. But wait, tell me also, what did normal look like for you, and how did you arrive at unconventional?
Yeah, I think taking sort of the approach in the outdoors where I do so much work and it's where I live so much, the outdoors for me growing up in Montana was like a very specific kind of person. It was pretty homogenous. It was you walk, talk, sort of like everyone. It's you fit into this category. I think that's kind of how normal becomes defined. It's you do the same thing over and over again because you see that's what you're seeing, right? It's that's how you think you should be acting, or that's what you should do. It was pretty big for Abby and myself to be in Los Angeles doing a lot of the work that we do out there, because it just shifted up perspective so much of what the outdoors can look like outside of kind of the typical outdoor setting when you start looking at urban outdoors and people that are traditionally not the people you would see in the outdoors, and how that gets all shifted up. So normal for me then started becoming how can we make the outdoors? How can I kind of come into it finding my own flavor, my own voice, and I've always, clearly I love color, and so that's always just been who I am, and so I'm like, how can we find ways to bring your own flavors into the outdoors? And even if that seems unconventional, that starts to become normal for me, and then help others find that own voice for themselves that then becomes their own normal, even if it hasn't been normal in the past.
And Abby, when you were talking about, especially growing up, like there's a way, especially as teenagers, that a lot of folks just want to kind of fit in. They want to disappear a little bit. But you mentioned that it was in your early teens or in your mid-teens that you started to lose your hair, and that began to change for you. Can you talk to me a little bit about that journey and how that looked as that started to happen for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was 14. I was just entering high school, which is just a wild time kind of in general for absolutely everyone. But entering into high school and then also losing my hair over the course of about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah, I think there's a video. That was a really, really wild experience, because when I experienced it for the first time, and I've had alopecia many different times throughout my life, but the first experience with it was when I was turning 14, 15. And that was really, really challenging to go through as a woman. A lot of our femininity, a lot of our identity is kind of connected to our hair, and for a lot of different people it is in general. But especially for women, we're always marketed shampoos and the conditioners and the products and how to style it, and you see everyone in media that are role models with this beautiful hair, and that was just like being stripped away from me, and I had no control over it. That was really, really challenging to go through. I'm super, super lucky that I had great friends. My mom was a nurse, so we went straight to work. I saw every dermatologist ever, it felt like. And everybody said, this is an autoimmune thing, this is alopecia, alopecia areata it started as. So patches kind of develop on the scalp and your hair just falls out, and there's really nothing you can do. You can try and get steroid shots, but it was a really wild journey to go through that, and also then pack up my bag and go to soccer, and then go to school, and just kind of like, okay, we're gonna deal with this. That's really all I could do. So I really, I think, bottled it up for years. And now in my 30s, I'm processing and addressing all of the trauma that kind of came with that. But yeah, it was wild. It was a really wild adventure. But absolutely the best blessing of my whole entire life. And I really strongly feel that it's those challenges that pull the real self out of you over the years. Everyone has them. It's not just me because I'm bald. It's everyone has had something challenging that they move through, that they deal with throughout the course of your life. And that makes us exactly who we are as we grow through life, So I've come to understand that about it over time. Yeah.
There was something you said about, and wait, I'm coming to you in a second, but there's something that you said specifically about redefining femininity and what that looked like for you, and I wouldn't even say redefining, I guess expanding the definition of femininity. What did that part of the journey look like for you, especially with this happening to you as a teenager, when we're really, and teens are always defining what they are, what it means to be a woman in those days. What did that look like for you to redefine that as you were losing your hair?
Yeah, I think that was my biggest struggle, right? I didn't feel feminine, and I was also a natural redhead, so a lot of my identity in general was tied to being a redhead. My soccer nickname was Big Red, and then I lost all my hair, so there goes Big Red. It was, it was really hard to lose that part of my femininity, and I feel like it's why I've connected with things like makeup artistry, and I've taught myself to do a fire-winged eyeliner or a really, bright pop of pink, because some of those things for me represent femininity, and they kind of remind the world that I'm a woman, and I'm very proud to be a woman. I identify with that personally, and I lost that when I was at that kind of pivotal age where you're kind of starting to learn that stuff. I think it's been an ongoing kind of search for what that is for me over time. I think that I always found a lot of expression through how I dress and just like mixing interesting patterns together, doing really cool makeup, wearing an awesome hat just because I love it. You know, like building my identity in different ways has really helped with that process.
When I think about redefinition, Wade, I think one of the things that I've noticed about your work is you're trying to redefine what it means for people to be outdoors, what it means for each individual to be outdoors. You're kind of expanding that for yourself and for others as well. Can you talk a little bit about your journey to like when that started to click for you? Like what did it look like when you were like, this is something I can offer to other people?
Yeah, totally. I think a big thing for me was seeing how expansive the outdoors can be and not being so pigeonholed in like even geographically when you think of just like even where we're at, right? Like Vermont has such a known outdoor scene. You think of places like even where I grew up in Montana, but when you start talking about the urban outdoor stuff, going to Los Angeles was pretty pivotal for me because you realize like, goddamn, there's so much outdoors literally around one of the biggest cities in the country, yet so many people don't know or like have access to it or really have an interest to go explore in it. I mean, the largest section of urban wilderness in the entire North America area is in Los Angeles, and you would never know that. It's like, it is there, just people don't think about it. So for me, it was seeing that like, there's so many people that could benefit from this. And personally, like even when we moved out there, it was like, wow, I thought my life was gonna dramatically get reduced in the outdoor section of my life, but it was like dramatically, we came from Colorado at that time. So like coming from living in Denver, going to LA, I was like, oh man, this is a bummer. I'm just gonna have to be more of a city boy, I guess. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, not even close. Like I was having better access to it because it is so lush and there's such a plethora of it out there. But again, the like education, the access, the kind of people that traditionally are going out there, even though like LA is an extremely diverse city. So to answer your question, man, it was for me, like having that journey myself and being like, why can't this be for other people? Like even native Angelinos, like they don't even know about this stuff. And like, why is that? And start asking those questions, talking to people, like how can you get out there? What's the reason you're not getting out there? And then understanding that probably outdoors has looked a certain way for so long that they don't see themselves. I was fortunate enough to come from an environment where like it was just ingrained in me. Like I just saw myself as an outdoors dude. Like that's just what I did. I grew up skiing. I had a family that took me into that stuff. But when I came to Los Angeles and saw that like that's not the case for so many people, it made me realize like, well, maybe the outdoors needs to start redefining itself a little bit. And how can we start redefine that for other people to make it more familiar for them? Yeah, that exactly.
Like that.
That's what's going on.
I asked him earlier if we have to do that dance when we go outside.
Oh, you do?
He said we don't. So
We're all doing it together at the end of this talk. Everyone's getting up. But yeah, man, it's I think finding ways, for me at least, to show that the outdoors can look a little different than how people have traditionally perceived it. And for myself, again, being in Los Angeles, like being inspired by the flavors of the city, why can't you see some of that crossover into its literal backyard? I mean, when I say that statement again, but it's crazy that like the largest section of urban wilderness is in LA. I didn't believe that. And then I went and saw it and I'm like, it's Griffith Park. It's right here in the heart of LA. And there's mountain lions living in LA. Like, what the hell is this? And I think it was so cool for me to see like, this stuff is here. The outdoors just has looked a certain way for so long, people don't see themselves as that.
There's, watching y'all together and looking at the way your work interacts, there's a lot of expressiveness, y'all. There's a lot of expression that comes. And so I'm gonna ask you kind of a question we didn't talk about, but I did watch your videos. So I was wondering, Wade, can you tell me how y'all met?
Oh man. Do you want me to answer this one or do you want to hit it?
No, it's your turn.
Yeah, yours is pretty, we'll come back to Abby. I'd like you to tell yours.
I'll give you the cliff notes of it. So it's kind of a good story because it ties into actually what we do for a living with creating content. I was up in Canada. We're both from Montana, but we didn't even know each other in Montana, which is rare. Most Montanans are like, you meet in Montana. Like, we met in the real world.
Yeah, there's not very many of us.
We're up in Canada. She was going to makeup school in Vancouver. I was on a project in Victoria. I saw some of her work online, and I was like, wow, this woman's incredible. Like, she's so beautiful. She has amazing artwork. I want to know who she is. So I reached out, and she said, hey, if you can come over to Vancouver, like, I'll totally meet you and say what's up. So I had like a 24-hour window to get over there from the project I was on. And I was like, I'll jump on the ferry, just get over there. Ferry wasn't running that day. So I was like, okay, I guess there's a prop plane thing I can get on maybe. So I tried booking a ticket on that. totally booked up. I was like, oh man, this is not good. Like, I'm not a great planner, so left to the last second, I'm like, oh God, what am I gonna do? So I saw this private helicopter company, and I'm like, definitely can't afford a ticket on this private helicopter, but I have my camera with me and wanted to shoot my shot. So went up to him and said, hey, there's this person I'm going to meet. You never know, it could be my wife. And you know, if you can let me get on your helicopter, I'll make you guys a 30-second video for Instagram. And they were just like, wow, we don't know what to say. We've never been pitched that, but what the hell, jump on, man. So jumped on the helicopter, basically vlogged this experience of going to meet this person. Like, no idea what this is gonna be. It could be, it's gonna be a story, but who knows what it turns into.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario is like, we just don't connect, I guess. And then like, oh, woe is me, I get back on and go back. Best case scenario, we're literally talking about this right now on stage, and we're having our honeymoon in Vermont.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Well, let me just ask you, Abby, like, what's it like? This guy gets on a helicopter and shows up. Like, I mean, for most women, I'm like, is he crazy or is he, you know what I mean? Like, how you feel about
thought
it?
the same thing. How could you not? Yeah, I was blown away. I think what happened was he said, okay, I'll fly in. So I think I drove to the
Yeah,
airport.
you did.
Wow.
You
And he
definitely
was
did.
like, no. I said, what gate are you at? And he said, no, I'm at this helicopter pad. And I was like, helicopter pad? Who is this guy? Like, what am I getting myself into? And I was definitely intimidated. And then he told me the story, the backstory. And I was like, I love you already. This is amazing. How did you do that? Number one. And yeah, this is great. So we actually, we met right there on this helicopter pad. Like immediately, and I
kissed her.
He kissed me.
I didn't mean to. I literally was
was
like, I'm
just-
trying to give you a hug, but it was like so much adrenaline of like,
It was
I got in
mutual.
this
It was
helicopter and I'm
mutual.
over meeting this person, and I just give her a hug and I kissed her, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And she was like, no, actually, it's all
into it.
good.
I'm into it.
Like, wow, I guess you're my person. Here we go.
We had this crazy chemistry, and
Yeah.
we kind of hit it off immediately, and then we spent the next week backpacking through Vancouver. We were just like, this is awesome, like
Yeah.
you're epic, and we started filming each other right then and there. We were filming our adventure, and he was like, this is a tripod. We're gonna connect it to this tree and tie it on, and film ourselves running off, and then see if we can edit it this way, and let's add some music. And we were just started making
Yeah.
literally the first week that we met, and I think he had a case of beer with him. It was just like fun. It was really low pressure, and I had seen his work online a little bit. And I was super intimidated because I'm like, this guy is like super into the outdoors. He's gonna be all aggro, and he wasn't at all. He was so open and just like welcoming and warm immediately. And so I felt really welcome. And I grew up in Montana as well. So we were like, yeah, let's pack up the backpacks. Let's go on an adventure. And he surprised me with these like incredible tree houses in the rainforest that he had found. And we just ended up having the best week ever, basically, and the rest is history. We have continued to make with each other, and yeah.
I think it was the
ever
playfulness
since.
for me. It was like right away, it was just so playful, and that
Yeah.
carried into like what we created and just sort of our approach into the world.
Yeah.
So y'all, y'all were individual creators, and then you're coming together at this point. Can you talk a little bit about like how it works both as individuals and as a team? Because I know y'all both have very, very separate, unique missions, but it works well as y'all complement each other. So talk to me a little bit about how your work complements Wade's and Wade's. You can tell me how your work
Yeah.
complements Abby's.
Totally.
I would say there's not many pieces of media out there on our social channels or anything that we make that the other person is not involved with. Like almost every single time, if I'm filming something, whether it's a makeup tutorial or something for a partner, Wade is involved. Whether he's editing on the back end or I'm editing something of his, we're always involved with that. So we're really, really lucky that that works very well for us. Because I know every time we tell people that, they're like, I could never work
Could
with
never.
my husband. Yeah. And I don't know how it works so well. It's not smooth all the time. We definitely disagree on things, but I think our foundation is the same. As long as we're creating something that we're passionate about, that we're genuinely, authentically really excited about, it makes overlapping really easy because we're working towards the same missions, like getting more color out into the world, inspiring people to feel like they can express themselves authentically. That's really important to us. So I think it does overlap really well because individually our brands are different, but everyone online knows us together too. So we actually get the best feedback when we're working together, when we're on camera together, or because we're so different also. Like he's wild. He's just so much energy, and I'm definitely more of an introvert, even though I like to visually be bold. Like I have a totally different personality. So we complement each other in that way. And I think that makes that fluidity back and forth work really well.
Wade, tell me a story about a time that y'all disagreed and on a project or anything, and you worked through it and how that worked.
Oh, I have a good one.
What were you thinking?
Oh, you go first.
No, I need to think. I mean, we're usually on the same page for a lot of stuff. I think with some of the outdoor focus stuff, I've seen some disagreements because it's been harder for Abby to maybe like literally see herself being in that space. She's like, I don't see people that look like me here, so it feels like her zone is the beauty space, and my zone is much more the outdoor space. I think they've gone back and forth nicely because like there'll be moments where I'm like, why don't you take your incredible art that you're doing out into wild, dramatic outdoor locations to start kind of showcasing that to your community that, again, is not necessarily an outdoor crowd, but it might bring that into their peripheral. And the same thing for me, like pulling me into kind of what you do and making me feel that I can express myself even more so than I was before. Whether it's like clothing, fingernails, like even makeup for that matter, of being like, yo, I want to wear makeup and go out on a date night. Like, let's do it. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's been helpful for both of us to show that it doesn't have to look one singular way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw Homer.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Homer's her. That was her.
That's incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think for me personally, on the disagreement stuff, back to that, it's like there's been like a tug and a pull at times of being like, Abby, we should try to do this. And she's like, I don't feel comfortable with that. And so it's trying to figure out like, I'm usually the one pushing a little bit more and being like, you gotta do this, you can do this, you can do this. And she's slowly kind of seeing, okay, maybe I am that. What were you thinking specifically?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of a different example, but I think that's a really important point because it's definitely been a challenge that I've had in the outdoor space.
Yeah.
Because I do makeup like this. I like to turn myself into characters and talk about alopecia.
And old Abby was more like
I had
the version that you would expect to see in the outdoors.
I had
it was like
blonde pigtails,
Exactly.
and a beanie, and that fits really well into the outdoor community. And losing my hair, putting on a bike helmet, I feel really different. I feel very not feminine without hair to kind of show that I'm feminine. So I don't know. So it's always been a little bit of a challenge for me. It still is. But Wade is always the engine being like, it's fine, just go. And that's great. I need that push, so.
Wade, what has Abby taught you about being authentic in the outdoors, because it sounds like what you're talking about is a lot of what you're trying to accomplish, which is saying like, nah, you don't have to fit a mold, come on out here and do your thing.
Yeah.
What has Abby taught you about that, and how do you apply that to the work that you do now?
Yeah, totally. I think one of those things is understanding that it might be uncomfortable for certain types of people. Just because I've had an experience and I see it a certain way doesn't mean that everyone is going to inherently see it even closely to that. And I think even someone like Abby, who I'm like, dude, you grew up in the same area as me. Like, you know what this is. Like, why are you so timid about this? And then seeing like, okay, trying to put myself, like in the shortest way without going off is just like empathy, first off, of being able to put myself in her shoes and be like, damn, okay, because of your circumstance and where you're at, you're not viewing all of this how I'm viewing this. And that gets me to sort of reshift my focus and my perspective of how other people who might not look or have not look like me or have my background might also see it totally differently than like, this is a rad playground. Oh my God, I want to go in it. Versus like, well, their experience and their background might not show it like that to them. And I think, again, Abby just being so close to me, but also like having even a different perspective on something that's so close to my heart really shifted my perspective of like, okay, maybe I need to kind of back up for a second and stop and rethink some things.
How do you do that? Because that sounds, when you say that, I immediately thought of myself, like, I do not think the outdoors is for me.
Yeah.
And I know people tell me it is all the time. Like,
Yeah.
is Jeff in the room? Jeff is always trying to get me to do stuff at Sea Change. He's like, oh, let's go skiing. I'm like, no. He's like, let's go do it. I'm like, I don't want to do any of that. Like, I just want to do the stuff that I know. I don't want to strap nothing on. I don't want to be in no chairs that don't fit me. Like, I don't want to do none of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
like, how do you convince somebody that, nah, this is for you? Like, especially after the conversation we had yesterday where we're talking about how connected we should be to Earth and all that. Like, how do we actually get to a place where you've like gone past those barriers or those boundaries that I'm creating for myself?
Totally, man. I think a lot of it comes down to finding entry points of relatability that might not be your like typical outdoorness. So instead of being like, man, that mountain's so beautiful, let's go hike it. It's like, well, maybe you don't really want to do that. Maybe you don't connect to the scenic element of it, or like, you know, the smelling of the flowers or the stuff that other people might be like, why don't you relate to that? So for me, it's being like, well, what are things that you're about that aren't even about the outdoors, and how can you bridge that in? So for me, it's always been like color and fashion, because I'm like, that is a thing that inherently isn't really outdoors, but like it steps into other aspects of culture that I think acts as a bridge to bringing people in. So I look at things of like music, art, fashion, things that again aren't intrinsically outdoors, but then you can find a connection and relatability to that. And then how do you start bridging that into being like, that was the whole idea of like getting people to put on colorful clothes here, of like, take that outside, see how you look, like vibe in that, because maybe that's an opportunity to see themselves as like, if you see someone wearing that in the outdoors, like you go outside and you're like, dude, that's rad, that's so cool. That is a piece that you're gonna connect with, maybe not the mountain, but maybe it starts helping you feel more comfortable to come into it, and then you get like that second layer of outdoor experience. It's that entry point that is important for me to see, like, maybe look at this differently. Maybe other people that come from different cultures aren't gonna value what I valued growing up in Montana, but maybe like the music or, you know, things that are inherently more like urban focused, because that's a huge piece of how I look at it, is like there's so many people in these urban environments that have no relationship to it, but I think it's because it's like missed the mark of looking what matters to them and then being able to take elements of that that's relatability into the outdoors.
So I got to go outside with my shoes.
Yeah.
And then I'll be used to camping.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta love it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna tag off of that. I think it's building a relationship that is like really authentic to who you are as a person.
Yeah,
you have to be able to show up as yourself in the outdoors to build a relationship with it. And if you're going into a space and whether it's how you dress or visually look, and you don't feel comfortable, why would you want to go into that space? You have to be able to bring your authentic self into the outdoors. And of course, be, conscious of don't litter. You have to learn how to protect the outdoors, obviously. But, I think that it's important that if we're going to protect the outdoor space, we have to have people form a relationship with it to learn how to protect it. And it's a big conversation. And in the natural world right now, it's definitely the communities that are already comfortable and familiar with it want to protect it, and they don't want more people coming in. And I understand that perspective. And at the same time, you have to open it up for people to build a relationship with it so that they can protect it.
Yeah.
It's tricky, but people have to be able to show up as they are. I should be able to go on a hike, maybe in this jacket. Is it super functional? Probably not. But I have to, if I feel comfortable in it, then I should be able to do that. And I do think that the outdoor space needs to be welcoming to that, because people have to have a relationship with it to want to participate.
Speaking of authenticity, there's a piece as you were talking and it just occurred to me. Can you tell me the moment when you probably felt your most authentic, especially after losing your hair and after figuring out makeup and all that? Was there a moment where you were just like, this is it, I'm me now in this new iteration of me?
Yeah, actually, yes. One moment, I guess, comes to mind when we did a collaborative piece telling our stories separately, really, with Firefox, the browser, and they were just really amazing in how they wanted to tell our stories. And we did a single day shoot where they came to the house. I told my story, and I had really been very kind of hardened to telling my story. I don't really cry because I look like this every day. I'm not like, I have alopecia and it's really hard. That's not my experience, because this is just how I look. And so anyways, in this interview, we were talking about the whole thing, and I started to cry, and I was like, what is happening to me? Why can't I hold it together? And I think it was because I was realizing that. I was looking back on these old photos of myself when I looked really different, and I was realizing that this is me now. Like, that really is kind of a different person when I had hair. Like, I connected with my soul and myself so differently than I do now, because I really shed all those insecurities of having the hair loss underneath, hiding underneath a hat, and God forbid the hat came off. Well, then what's going to happen? Everyone's going to know. It was this fear that I had so deep inside me that was really worrying about how other people were going to see me with this hair loss. And in shaving my head, Wade shaved it when I experienced alopecia for the second time in my 20s, a year after we met. That I realized. So, in this Firefox interview, I realized that this is me. Like, I really never want my hair to grow back, because this has taught me an unbelievable lesson about how I view myself and how I view other people. Like, an incredible understanding of empathy for everyone else's circumstance. And I never would have known that or had that same perspective had I not lost my hair, So I think, like, coming into the most authentic version of myself wasn't until, it was a few years ago, I was probably 28 or 29 maybe. Like, it took a long time to really come into that. And it was in a big part, in a lot of ways, through social media and through sharing my experience that I learned that. And I think that's the really powerful thing about social media, is that you, like, in sharing your own experience, you realize that you're not the only one with that experience, and that we're all in a lot of these different challenges or circumstances together. So it really is such a connector. It's really, really powerful to share your story, even especially when it's really hard to tell,
Wade, I want to I have a couple questions, and then we'll open up for some Q&A.
Cool, man.
But Wade, I want to ask you the same question. Is there a moment when you felt authentically yourself outdoor? Do you remember a story or something where you realized that this was something that you wanted to share with other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think where we live in Los Angeles is a pretty Hispanic area in LA. And so there was definitely a moment where I was hiking kind of right where we live, and seeing this individual who it was like late night too, and so it was like sun was going down, and this guy stopped when I was coming down, and he's a Hispanic guy, and he was just like, hey man, he was asking like where hiking stuff was at, because like I heard someone told me that you could hike around here. I don't know what that even means. And he was like, asking all these questions about where to go and what to do. And I was just like, hey man, why don't you just come up here and watch the sunset for a second? Because it's like 100 yards. We don't have to do the whole thing, but why don't you just come up here with me? And he was like in like jeans and a flannel shirt. And I'm just like, just come up here, and I'll just kind of, you get a little bit up so you can like look out and see some things. And it was really cool for me to see this, like, it was almost like his brain chemistry changed for a second, because he walked up there and then like was watching the sunset with me, and he was just like a little kid. He was like, what is this? Like, this is, you can do more of this here? He's like, do you have to pay for this? And I was like, no, this is just free, dude. You come do this. And it was really neat to see a moment like that, where it's just kind of chance that this guy was walking down, he was there, and he came up and had just this like beautiful experience. And my thought there was like, hopefully he goes now and tells his family, his friends about this too, and then realizes like this is right in this backyard. And for me, that was like a huge moment of like, I got so much enjoyment and personal happiness of just seeing someone else's stoke get so high off of a simple thing of like, let's look at a sunset on this hill. And I was like, man, there's probably so many people that could benefit from that as well. So it was like a moment for me to say, like, I need to be doing better, like more work, more effort into showcasing that, and almost acting maybe like a bridge or a guide to help people get into some of those zones and understand what this is all about.
I guess the final question for both of you would be, what do you hope to change in the world with your content?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to go?
You go.
I think immediately I want to change confidence for women, and I really hope to inspire that through artistry. whether that is through an interactive painting like we did today. So many great conversations and women sharing their own stories of hair loss or loss in general. Anyways, I think that I want to inspire confidence, that can look a lot of different ways. It can come in lots of different chapters of your life, but that you can pull that out of yourself. And I think through art and through any form of expression, that is a really, really great way to do that, because it's also healing at the same time. Yeah.
Wade?
My goal is to get you to go skiing with me this winter, man. We're doing it. That's what's happening. Then it's all my goals are done. Run, skiing, hit the slopes.
I don't want to go. I had enough trouble snowshoeing. Is Dr. G here? She knows. Oh, yeah. I fell into a crevasse twice. I don't want that to happen again.
Oh, damn. Okay, we won't do that.
All right, at this time, we got about 6 minutes left. Does anybody have a question, a comment, quandary, anything that we can address? Wait for the mic to come to you. We got one here.
One of the things online is that it's so hard to find your audience. So, how did you grow your audience? How did you find them? How did they find you?
Great question.
Great question.
Yeah. First of all, it took a long time. It was for both Wade and I. Wade and I have been making content a while. He's been making content since way longer than I have. But
Napster.
Since Napster. Yeah. But yeah, I think patience, and I think so much consistency. Sometimes I feel like I'm telling the same story over and over again, and every time a handful, 6 or 7 people will come up and be like, I had no idea you had alopecia. What is alopecia? I'm like, are you kidding? I talk so much about alopecia, but the truth is so many people don't know, even when you feel, and this is something I still struggle with, Wade tells me all the time, I feel like I'm shouting and I'm really whispering.
Definitely.
And I think that's really true. Even if you're saying the same thing over and over and you feel like it's very clear to the world, whether that's online or in person, you have to be louder and you have to be consistent in what you're saying. So I think that over time, and it's tough with the social platforms, right? Because you just are vulnerable to them. That's kind of the nature of them. But I found so much joy in diversifying also. Sometimes the community on TikTok is very different than Instagram or YouTube. YouTube is so drastically different from TikTok, but people really, just the relationships are all different in every platform. So I think being consistent and diversifying is a great start.
And I also think being very, almost micro niche specific to something, because of a much better chance of building a community around something. I've even struggled with that because I see myself in many different ways, and being able to communicate that online is very challenging for the rest of the world to see you as this, which is all good, but honing in on one thing. So for me, it's been this urban outdoors aspect, because it gets people, number one, geographically in your area to see what you're talking about. And you see it where the social platforms are going too. The difference with a TikTok to an Instagram is the entire algorithm is based off of an interest graph, meaning that you're feeding the content's being fed out on TikTok based off your interests, not the person. Whereas on Instagram, it was literally oh, I follow this person, so I'm going to get their content. Now you're seeing these algorithms be no, we want to serve content to people's specific interests. So I won't even see Abby's content at times, and I'm so close with her. But it's not because I follow her; it's because I'm not as much engaged in some of her content. So you want to really think about what are the interests that you want other people to align with you on, and make content around that specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Got one in front. Everybody got questions, wherever.
Hey, following off of that, I was just wondering, for people and companies getting started, what are some tips that you have for communicating effectively?
I feel like this is a you question. You're the communicator. No, I think great question. It's a challenge for me because I feel like I have so much to say, and I'm always concerned about how to say it. But I think Wade's approach, and this is just coming from experience being his partner, is really awesome. He doesn't hold back. He just puts it all out there. And if there's if there's something that you want to experiment with, if you're a business and you're trying to figure out how to communicate effectively, make a list, make a plan of ideas and work through that list. And it just takes time to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. But, and when it comes to content, it's hard to plan it and be creative at the same time.
Yeah.
That we always, I think that's a never-ending struggle. And keeping up with the way every platform changes and evolves with how it feeds the content. It's always hard to communicate effectively, but I think being really clear is good. Like really clear and blending that with a creative way to present it.
And also, I think brands also, like, they take themselves so serious a lot. Like, really break that down and think about, don't take it so serious. I think the brands I see do it really, really well are the ones that add this playfulness to it that makes it feel less like the brand's even trying to advertise or talk to them at all in regards to like a product promotion thing. It's really like, we want to just engage with you in a fun way, and taking that approach seems to always work well. We were literally just talking about Liquid Death in the back, and that's
Murder your thirst.
Yeah, murder your thirst, exactly. Like, use things like that to have fun with it, and it just kind of brings that barrier down, and you're speaking less like a brand to a person. It's just person to person.
I think we have one up front and one back there.
I think, oops. I think this question is mostly
next.
for you, Abby. I promise I'm not a social media Luddite, but I am haunted a bit by the evidence, the apparent evidence that social media can contribute to mental health issues, lack of confidence, lack of a feeling of well-being and even happiness. And yet I love that you're saying that your objective is to help women gain confidence. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about those two sides of the coin, what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, great question. A super important question too. It's very real. Social media is not all great, right? We know the evidence. We know how harmful it is, especially on young people. So it's a really challenging topic. But I think my perspective on it is that I don't see it going away. So how can we work with it? And how can we train the algorithms for good, right? How can we put out positive messaging and create communities that cultivate kindness? That's how I feel about it. I think that it's an option to kind of totally separate from it and not interact at all. And if that's a choice, that's great and that works for you. I have found so much beauty in the building of community centered around connecting on things that are hard. And I think that's really important for humans. And if you can take those relationships and just kind of like Quaid and I, and it starts online. I now work with so many different people. I work with burn survivors, and I teach workshops for women that have lost limbs, lost pieces of their faces, and we've connected online and then built a workshop in person where we get to work together and, draw on eyebrows together because we both don't have them. And things like that. I think that there can be a positive side to almost everything. You just have to find it. And social media is the same thing.
We have one more. We're going to do one more. We got one right up front, and then that's it for us.
Are there any myths?
This is Mike.
Are there any myths that you want to debunk about social media or like common assumptions that haven't been your experience?
Social media is for young people? 100% not.
Good one.
Some of the people that are like literally like rising social media stars are like grandparents.
Yeah.
And it's like they're killing it on different social platforms. And I'm like, you're 75 and you are making such a positive, like even what's her name? Batty Winkle. Yeah,
My
go look up
girl.
Batty Winkle.
She's
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly, Batty Winkle. But that's a great example of like, you can speak to that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's for everyone. That's the beauty of the internet.
Yeah.
I think that, it allows anyone to be themselves. So as long as you feel comfortable showing up, that it does not discriminate. So,
Totally.
I think that is a myth. I also think that thinking that I always get really sad when people say, "Oh, I expected you to be different in real life than how you are online." Like, no, I'm the person. This is how I'm showing up. This is me.
Yeah.
That is, and there are some people who participate in social media like that. But I always am very strong in saying that people are people
Yeah.
and trust that people are good, and fingers crossed, really hope that they're the same in real life, because most of the time they are. Yeah.
Love it.
Cool.
That's it for, wait, Greg, we done? Yeah. All right, we'll take one more question. Go on.
Hi there. So regarding the algorithms, I'm sure I can't outsmart them, but do you have any tips, and let's just say with Instagram, as to how we can have them like help work with us on our interests? So for example, Harry Styles, I think he's kind of cool, and I liked a couple of his things, and then for the next week, it's all Harry Styles all
Yeah.
the time, and yeah. So how can we sort of cultivate our interests?
Yeah, I mean, be very intentional with what you're engaging with online. Like, if there's other interests you have, make sure that you're engaging. If you you can kind of curate what your feed is going to look like based off of what you're engaging with. If you see a picture of Harry Styles, great, but maybe don't go leave 10 comments on it, because you're probably going to get a lot of Harry Styles after that. And so I think being intentional, like, what do you want to get out of it, right? A lot of times people are just like, I'm seeing all this different stuff. Well, that's kind of what's being fed to you, because it's reading your behavior. So it's like, if you want business advice, if you want health advice, if you want to have positive messaging, really engage with those kinds of accounts. And so for us on the other end it's like putting out a volume of stuff around that, so more people can find it to engage in that. Because to your earlier question, what I want to see is just an overload flood of positivity and really good love being put into these spaces, because I think that's the only way you're gonna defeat some of to your question back there, the negativity and the harmfulness that you're gonna see on that.
One final question for both of you. What is your favorite social media platform?
TikTok.
I want to go way back to Friendster. No, I'm kidding, not that old. But yeah, probably.
What do you mean you're not that old? You were around for Friendster.
I know, yeah. Okay, you're calling me out now, man.
Get out of here.
But I was active on Friendster. I just know of it. I know it. I would say YouTube, only because that's what I started in back in the day, and YouTube is such a tried and true platform that it's long form storytelling. You're able to really get to know the content, the people. And YouTube is now a search algorithm. So if it's always been that, but it's more that now. So if you want to learn something, there's so much education, I think, in YouTube as well. And I don't see that one going anywhere. In TikTok and Instagram, who knows with that battle, but YouTube is for sure going to be around forever.
That question to me is it has two prongs, because I like creating on TikTok. I love creating. I love the user experience. I love the quick editing. I love how easy it is to just film everything in my phone and get my ideas out immediately. Because YouTube, I'll sit and I'll have ideas for months, and they will never see the light of day because of the process it takes to film and make for YouTube. But I love consuming YouTube content.
Black Planet. All right, that's it for us today. Let's give it up for one more time for Wade and Abby.